It is 5:03 p.m. Yep. Let's begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
All right, so Commissioner Brennan.
Present.
Commissioner Bory.
Here.
Commissioner Kinner.
Here.
I have Commissioner Danford.
Here.
And I have Heather Moeller out right at this time, and Chairman Mitchell.
Present.
So you have a quorum, Chairman Mitchell.
Excellent. Item D on the schedule, consent agenda.
We have no consent agenda items,
Item E on the agenda is public hearings.
no public hearings,
Item F on the agenda is old business.
none at this time.
Okay. Item G, new business. So it says here 22-768, nominations and election of the Health and Human Services Chairperson and Vice Chairperson. I guess I will begin with, can we have a motion to open the nominations for the chairperson?
So moved.
And I'll second.
Okay.
All right.
I don't know if I was supposed to say, can I have a second? I'm reading this thing here.
You're Commissioner new.
All right, roll call.
My apologies, let's go. Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Commissioner Bory,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinner,
Yes.
Commissioner Danford,
Yes.
and Chairman Mitchell.
Yes. And
Right.
I now call for nominations for chairperson.
Chairman Mitchell, I nominate you for chair.
Okay?
And I'll second that also.
Oh, I have to say 3 times. I call for nominations for chairperson. And I call for nominations for chairperson. And can I have a motion to,
One more.
one more. I call for nominations for chairperson. Okay? And seeing none other, can I have a motion to close nominations for chair?
So moved.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
And roll call.
Sorry, taking notes at the same time. Commissioner Kinner,
Here. Yes.
Commissioner Bory,
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Commissioner Danford,
Yes.
Chairman Mitchell.
Yes.
All right, nominations are closed.
Okay. I now call for a motion to approve the vice chairperson.
So we need the motion to approve the chair. As we
sorry.
close nominations.
That's what this is. Okay. Now call for a motion to approve myself for the chairperson role.
And
Fine.
I'll second that now.
Roll call.
No, I'll second that, right?
Thank you. Bory, you're going to be the nomination, because what he did was he called for a motion, so you'll be the
Yeah.
first, and Brennan will be the second.
Okay.
All right, and roll call.
Roll call, yeah.
Commissioner Bory,
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Commissioner Danford,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinner,
Yes.
Chairman Mitchell.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Chairperson is Mitchell.
Okay. And I do see it says provide the gavel to the newly elected chairperson. It had to travel very far. Okay, can I have a motion to open nominations for vice chairperson?
So moved.
Okay, can I have a second?
Second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Kinner,
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Commissioner Bory,
Yes.
Commissioner Danford,
Yes.
Chairman Mitchell.
Yes.
All right, motion passes.
I now call for nominations for vice chairperson.
I nominate Commissioner Kinner for vice chair.
I call for nominations for vice chairperson.
I nominate Commissioner Brennan for vice chair.
Ooh, that's evil.
I call for nominations for vice chairperson. And one more time, I call for nominations for vice chairperson.
And then the vote will go in the order that the nomination was made.
Okay. And then it looks like can I have a motion to close nominations for vice chairperson?
So moved.
Okay, can I have a second?
I'll second.
And roll call.
Commissioner Bory,
Yes.
Commissioner Danford,
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Commissioner Kinner,
Yes.
Chairman Mitchell.
Yes.
All right, nominations are now closed.
And can I call for a motion to approve, I guess it would be first Commissioner Kinner as the vice chairperson.
So moved.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call.
Commissioner Kinner,
Yes.
Commissioner Bory,
Yes.
Commissioner Brennan,
Yes.
Commissioner Danford.
Yes.
Chairman Mitchell.
Yes.
Motion passes. Commissioner Kinner is vice chair.
And then, being successful, then we're done. Okay.
We are done with chair and vice chair.
Okay. There we
And
go.
we'll move on to item number 2.
Item 22-769 says presentation, annual review and discussion of the conflicts of interest, open meeting law, public record law, parliamentary procedures, and code of conduct by Joel, city attorney.
Good evening. Welcome back from Thanksgiving. I hope everybody had a good holiday. And you should have hard copies of the different rules, regulations, laws. So let's start with, and I don't know what order you have them in, but I'll just start with what order I have in. We'll go with the yellow copies first. Council boards and commissions code of conduct. What this is a document that the council created. Yeah, I typed it up, but this is their work. And this goes back to 2019. We had some clerical changes, so at the bottom you'll see November 2021 as revised. But other than that, it's the same document. So I'm not going to read all this because all of you have probably been through this before, or most of you have. And there's nobody on the phone, correct? There's no commissioners on the phone, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So what this is, it's something that council wanted boards and commissions and the city council to be accountable for in some form. So act in the public interest. Don't bring in your personal agenda. Not that any of you have a personal agenda, but if you do, don't bring it into these proceedings. Comply with the law. Be professional in your conduct. And so that means act in an impartial manner. Go to page 2, public meetings. This is common sense stuff too. Essentially, be respectful to your staff and to each other and to the public and to any applicants who come forward. If you want to comment on something in the paper or on social media, can you? Yes. But don't say on behalf of the Health and Human Services Commission. You can say your name and you can say Health and Human Services Commission member or vice chair or chair, but you can't say on behalf of. Okay, going to page 3, non-interference treatment with staff. I kind of covered that already. Gifts, well, in Arizona, the state legislature has so declared that $25 is the limit, which is, I don't know where they got that from. You know, with inflation, it should be 10% more, but 25% or $25 is what. So if somebody offers you $24 for something and they happen to be an applicant, is that a conflict? Well, no, because it's less than $25. But does it look bad by taking anything? That's up for you to decide. To me, that would look bad, and especially if it got out there. And social media can be vicious. So for $1, yes, they can go after you. Meeting distractions, keep your phones off if you can, or other laptops, unless you have a really important call that you know it's coming in. If you do take it, keep it on silent or vibrate, and then go out and talk to someone that way. Don't do it in here. That became an issue at the council, and that's why it's in here. Influencing elections, well, the election's over. Supposedly, it's over, but can you comment on the election? You can. You have not lost your First Amendment rights just by taking this voluntary appointment. But once again, don't say on behalf of the Health and Human Services Commission or on behalf of the city. Don't do that. That would be a problem, because then you might be seen as influencing an election, even though the election's over. But still, I would not comment on behalf of the city or the commission. Let's see, I covered that already. Attendance, if you're gonna be gone, make sure you contact Jennifer or Abby and tell them, hey, I'm gonna be gone. That way you get an excused absence. Because if you don't, and there's 3 of them, technically the commission can recommend to the council, or the council could just say, we're going to get rid of that person because they're not showing up. That has happened with P&Z before, by the way, at least on 2 occasions that I recall.
Joel, is that consecutive?
No,
No? Okay.
if you're not consecutive, it could be, not one month, and then you're there for 3 months, and then you disappear for the summer. That's a problem. That's if there's meetings, if there are meetings. Incompatibility of office, I think, Mr. Danford, you're on another commission.
Public art.
So is that basically a conflict with this board or this commission? No. The question is, sometimes there is, and if there is, you would declare a conflict if something does come up with a personal matter. I think you're doing the legal training now, so I think that's it. Any questions on conduct, code of conduct? No. Okay. How about conflict of interest? Let's do the orange sheet. The object of the conflict of interest statute is to remove or limit the possibility of personal influence which might bear upon a public official's decision. Purpose is to prevent self-dealing by public officials and public employees. So what they're talking about really is a pecuniary or proprietary interest. So that means money or some kind of ownership interest in a property. In your case, it's going to be some kind of affiliation, personal, with one of your applicants who are looking basically for you to recommend to council money for their, whatever they do for the community. So the question is, do you have a conflict when that happens? The answer is yes. And it's not just you, it's your relative. So if you go to page 6, under H, I'll read this one because this is important. Any individual within 2 degrees of kinship, including spouse, child's child, parent, grandparent, brother or sister, or of whole or half-blood, and their spouses, and the parent, brother, sister, or child of a spouse. So it's a relative also. So it's not just you. So if someone's on one of your applicants comes forward, and that's your spouse or a brother, you have to say, no, I can't vote on this one. Okay. So, why do you care? Well, there's reasons. There's some monetary issues, there's some criminal penalties, and there's some civil penalties that could occur if you're caught doing any kind of conflict, that you're knowingly doing it, and even negligently. Now, there,
Joel, last year, we had demonstrated conflicts of interest that both she and I recused ourselves from. However, so I was a past medical director for a New Leaf, and one of their agencies came in and asked, and I absolutely recused myself. However, in trying to balance the funding, I did make some statements or whatever on that. So I believe that wasn't a direct sort of violation of that, because it was just simply proportionately trying to deal with the allocation for everybody, so that was the discussion. It wasn't specifically about them per se, other than it did affect them.
if it's anything that's going to affect them or your decision, or influencing a decision by the board members, you should basically be silent on it.
Okay.
That's what I would do if that happens in the future.
Well, Joel, some of us sit on various boards and commissions, and some may request money. Could be Park and Rec, I'm Park and Rec, Library, and then Health and Human Services. So if any of those organizations request monies, then I need to recuse myself on those two commissions.
Well, if there are applicants that come before you, absolutely,
Okay,
absolutely.
because some of us sit on more than one
Yeah.
board.
Yes, that could be a problem if you're seeing them in one board. But I don't know I don't think there's going to be any kind of conflict. These are 501c3s that are coming before you for money. And I don't think, unless that comes up at
Could
like
be
the Friends,
or
library, but the
multi-gen,
Friends, they don't come to council, they're not applicants.
senior
Typically.
center.
Senior Center, if it's part of the AJ
It's dealt
Park and
with
Rec.
Park and
differently.
Rec, no,
It's dealt with differently.
that's a different funding source.
Okay,
And they're not applicants for Health and Human Services funding.
Yeah, the senior services is not tied to the funding for HHSC.
It-
It is in the general budget.
Yeah, and it used to be.
It used to
Used to be
be.
Senior Services. Dan
Right.
Taylor was the director, as I recall, but that went away. And so it got, the city manager combined or created an allocation, council passed it for those types of services.
okay.
So that one, I don't think you have to worry about. But the other, the non-city related ones that are 501c3s within the community, if you sit on those boards, that's a problem. Yeah, and you should not vote on these matters.
Well, then we may not have a quorum to pass some of that funding.
I don't see any funding issues with the grants or the third party that provides services to Park and Rec for senior services or the meals, because they do not apply for funding from the city. We apply for funding from them, or
Yeah.
they provide the service directly. So I'm not finding any areas, unless you can give a specific example,
Well, it
where,
could be a nonprofit, it could be Salvation Army, Boys and Girls Club, it could be some of the ones that we have funded.
Well, I think we'll take it on an as-needed basis, and if that
Okay.
comes up, please, in fact, that would go into what happens when you think you might have a conflict. Basically,
Contact Joel.
you come to me and you ask, hey, here's my situation, what do you think? And then if I think, oh no, I don't think you have one, then I'm gonna write up something, it'll get filed with the city clerk. You rely on it, you're good. If I'm wrong, that's my problem, not yours.
Okay.
So that's how it would go. And I'd base it on the facts that you give me. And then if you do have a conflict, you turn to the chair and say, Mr. Chair, I have a conflict and I'm going to sit out on this one. That's what you would basically do. And I think that is all that is really important, right, on conflicts of interest. Any questions on that one? Okay, let's go with the purple page, open meeting law. Public policy is that the meetings of public bodies be conducted openly and that notices and agendas be provided for such meetings which contain such information as is reasonably necessary to inform the public of the matters to be discussed or decided. So all meetings of a public body shall be public meetings, and all persons so desiring shall be permitted to attend and listen to the deliberations and proceedings. Now, there are some exceptions, executive sessions, that's when you meet privately, but that's when legal advice is provided. So I don't think that has happened too much with this commission. Why should you care? There's a bunch of reasons. Yeah, I'm not going to go through those. When does it apply? It applies when there's a quorum. So that means, say it's the night of the applications. They come to you, you've listened to them all, and now you're going to take a month to decide. But you decide, you know what, let's go to our restaurant and talk about it. Well, if there's 4 or more of you that do that, that's a problem. That used to happen with planning and zoning, by the way, when I first started. They'd talk about an item, then I'd say, okay, I need dinner after the meeting. I go over there, and there's like the whole P and Z, and they're talking about stuff. It's like, oh, and you don't want to hear that, and I just had to go. That happened more than once, and it used to happen very common in the 1990s and 80s. But so obviously you can't do that. You can't talk about stuff because everything's supposed to be in public, and that's when you're supposed to talk about it and deliberate with it. Public notice is given for the meeting. The notice is posted, and there's supposed to be an agenda that states what you're talking about, and it's got to be a reasonable description of what you're going to talk about. Doesn't have to be real detailed, but it has to give the public some kind of idea of what you're going to talk about. Can't be just applicants for funding. No, it has to say a little more than that. But it has to be a reasonable notice. Supposed to keep minutes, and by taping these and putting them on the internet and retaining the video, that is basically one way to keep the minutes. They don't have to be verbatim. I was challenged on that a number of years ago. I went to the AG's office, and they agreed with me. So that was a interesting fight.
So they can be a summary rather than,
It's a summary.
Verbatim.
It's who was there, what did you vote on, who voted on what, was there any members of the public that spoke, and that's it, and the time and the date, that's it. It doesn't have to be in detail. The fight was because there used to be minutes that were very detailed. The former city clerk had a deputy, and she was very good at taking notes, and she would put them in the minutes. And yes, was that convenient for people? It absolutely was, so they don't have to go and watch the video. Okay, but the law, and that took her a lot of time every week, 10 hours probably, to do the minutes for a council meeting. So the city manager said, does she have to do that? I said, no. So he said, no more. And that was it. And that's why some people were upset, because their convenience was upset. And now they had to go and actually watch the video. And they were lazy. They didn't want to do that. Or they couldn't figure out how to do it. But it's out there, and you can watch it on the city's website. I think that is all I need to talk about. There are some interesting cases in here, but if there's any questions,
Can you cover email, Joel?
sure, email.
Yep.
Yes, say you all are, you've seen the applications, but you haven't had your meeting yet, and you want to start talking about it, and then you start emailing each other. If a quorum of you do that, that's a problem, because now you're doing something that the public is not watching. Now, if you do that on the internet, if you do that like on Facebook, and now you're saying, oh yeah, well, it's a public meeting now because Facebook's watching. Well, no, that's not necessarily the public. Yeah, Facebook has a lot of followers, but that doesn't mean it's a public meeting. However, you shouldn't be talking to each other, 4 or more of you. And I would say don't do it at all. Just come to the meeting and do it that way. That's where your deliberations should be, and your communications, what you have in mind, why you're interested in a particular program. That's how it should be done. Not by email, not by phone, and not in writing otherwise.
Joel, doesn't the open meeting law also pertain to, like, if we had an event we went to, like, say a Christmas party, if 4 or more of us went to the same party, that would also kind of cross the line?
It would, and also, say you come to the council meeting, because you've already given your recommendation, and you sit together, and all of you are there. That's not going to look good, even though you're probably not talking about it. But remember, there's cameras in here, and some people remember your faces and say, hey, why are they sitting together? What are they talking about? Well, you already gave your recommendation, so what's the harm, right? That's still a quorum, technically, and you're sitting together, and the AG's office would presume that you're talking about things that you shouldn't be talking about because you're together. You're
What if-
guilty by association according to certain laws.
What if we all showed up and we were scattered around the room?
That's better, and you can do that. Social events, that's a difference. Say there's a chamber event and all of you want to go. Can you? Absolutely. Be careful when there's a crowd and now, there's 2, and now there's 3, and there's someone you want to talk to. Now there's 4 of you talking to this special person, whoever it is. Be careful with that, because now it looks like you're having a meeting, and it's about the funding, and you don't ever want to get accused of that.
So it's best to just avoid the appearance of impropriety.
Yes, but, you can go to a social event. Once again, you haven't lost your First Amendment rights by any means. Just you can't look like you're meeting, and you can't meet and talk about it. Any other questions on the purple sheets? Okay. Green sheet, parliamentary procedure. This is pretty short, but this is essentially Henry Martin Robert, who wrote the rules. And now we're on the 11th or 12th edition of his book. Now, a lot of that book, a lot of it does not apply to cities, towns, counties, states. It was really meant for fraternal order of committees and meetings. But we've adopted it, the city has, and we follow it. I'm the parliamentarian under the code, so I get to decide what applies and what doesn't. And some people may not agree with how I've interpreted that over the years, but I'm the attorney, so I get to decide how it is. And sometimes it doesn't apply, it just doesn't apply. For example, are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? You got to say that 3 times. I kept that going. That's more of a traditional thing. I think that was done because back in the days when this officer, or I forget, was he a colonel? I can't remember. We didn't have technological devices, so no one heard it the first time. No one heard it the second time. Maybe someone heard it the 3rd time and they knew, oh, you're calling for nominations. I think that's what it was about, and that's why it's 3 times. But I keep that one going because that's a tradition. But basically, how do you make a motion? And how do you keep order during the meeting? That's what this is about, parliamentary procedure. It's pretty common sense, isn't it? It is, I think. Yet you still have a green sheet that tells you what you're supposed to do. And, you're supposed to keep the procedure going so that majority is what rules. That's how it's supposed to be. This is a semi-democracy still. So majority rules. So the minority can be heard on it. Now that no one knows who the minority is yet until the vote, but every voice should be heard at one point. And once the majority is ruled, it's over. Move on. Don't take it personally. That's what is supposed to happen with these types of rules. The motions are pretty easy. How you make them, I move that. You're supposed to get recognition from the chair before you speak. That's hard to do, I know, because you get involved in the minute of it, and it's, especially if it gets a little excited. That doesn't always happen. It doesn't happen always at the council meetings and at other boards and commissions, but that's what you're supposed to do. Ask the chair, Mr. Chair, and then he'll say yes, and then you're recognized. You're supposed to be recognized to speak. We did the nomination of officers, and you did very well. Congratulations. So I think we got that down too. We got that down, so that's good. Any questions on the green sheets? Okay, we're on the blue, public records law. Public records and other matters in the custody of any public officer shall be open to inspection for any person at all times during business hours. The law serves to open government activity to public scrutiny. The core purpose of the law is to allow public access to official records and other governmental information so that the public may monitor the performance of government officials and their employees. So what you have, I think you all have an agenda. And if you make any notes on it, technically that's a public record. And technically you're supposed to give it to Jennifer and she's supposed to hold them for a certain amount of time based on state law. Why should you care about this law? Well, it's a law, one thing, and there's penalties if we don't follow it.
Joel, is that for every department in the city, or is that just for these kind of meetings?
It's for every single government, state, county, local, including board and commissions. Yes. In fact, let's see. Under open meeting law, you are covered as a board and commission, but under open meeting laws, you are also. So what happens is we get these requests from people. They want to look at the documents. Typically, they want copies. So how does that work? Someone does a public record request. They get it to the city clerk, or the police department because they've got their own records department, or the court because they have their own public record statutes also. We'll just talk about the city clerk since that's easiest. The clerk then sends it out to the appropriate departments for, hey, here's a public record request. Do you have any of these documents? If it's something that's easy, like say for a business license, nothing has to get redacted from that, meaning taken out or blacked out. So then they get that document and then they give that to that person who asked, and there's a 25-cent page fee. 50 cents for commercial, if someone's doing it for commercial activity. Electronic records, usually they want them electronically. So they say, hey, send me those records. Okay, it's 25 cents per page. Well, wait, it should be free. It doesn't cost anything for you to send. Well, per page, even per electronic page, that's how we do it. Someday the legislature is going to cut that out. I'm sure that's going to happen because the legislature is very hostile towards cities, towns, and counties. But right now we can charge 25 cents a page. So what is a public record? It's basically anything that we hold in the business of the city. So once again, that means anything that you're writing on. So if you're doing your evaluations for the 501c3s, and I think you have a script, and I think there's questions and you can answer them, or you can have, and Jennifer, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but don't they get for every single application some kind of sheet, and then they can evaluate them? Isn't that how you do it? That's correct?
I didn't hear your question.
When the applications come through from the 501c3s, when you give that out to the commission, don't they have a top sheet saying, okay, here are the areas that you can write in? Like if they have a question, or don't they evaluate them?
Yes, they do.
Okay, and so, and they do that.
Yeah, it's quite extensive, and there
Yeah,
is
and they can
a
write in-
scoring rubric. My
So
apologies.
it's a scoring
rubric.
packet, and they can write in things, correct?
Yes,
So that's a public record.
yeah. Whatever you write, any notes that you take tonight, basically I'm supposed to collect and keep that as a public record.
But when it comes to the applications, be careful what you write in there, because at one point, say you've got a very unhappy 501c3 because you gave them $1,000 and not 11,000 or whatever it is. At one point, they can do a public record request, and they can find out exactly how you scored it and why. They get to see what you wrote down. So keep that in mind. Don't do little comics on your pages. Don't write little things that, would be embarrassing later. But if it's how you feel about this, saying, oh, this program is useless to the city, be careful what you say. That's all I'm saying. Prompt disclosure. So when we get the public record request, we have to provide it. The statute, once again, this is the legislature, they say promptly. What does that mean? That means quickly. But what does that mean? So say I get 500 pages from Jennifer saying, okay, here's what was given over. So you need to go through them and now make sure that the privacy stuff is taken out, and you need to redact. So do I have to put aside everything that I'm doing and get to that and make that a priority? Well, that's how a judge would probably look at it, unless it's an undue burden on the city and it would affect the city with a harm. So I would have to do that, yes. If we don't, what happens is the other side can say, okay, you didn't do it promptly. I've got an attorney now, and we want that, and you didn't give it, so we want our attorney fees. And they could technically get to attorney fees if a judge says you didn't do it promptly. And that has happened to cities and towns. It happened to us in 2001. It was actually, it was a case that our insurance company hired an attorney for a case, a bad shooting, and they wanted a copy of the settlement agreement. And they said, we have a right to know how much that family's gonna get on that shooting. So the attorney, who was a litigator, they didn't know anything about public record law. They said, no, that's confidential. You're not getting that. And they had their own private law firm, and they were just on contract with our insurance company. So they didn't know that everything we do publicly is confidential. So they refused to give it. So there was a lawsuit by a First Amendment law firm. They knew what they were doing, and they won, and they got, I think it was $36,000 in attorney fees. And the case was only going on 2 or 3 weeks. It's amazing how much they billed, even back in 2001 dollars. So that happens, and we want to avoid that at all costs. The attorney fee costs are awful. Okay. I think I gave you a bunch of cases, and if you want any of those cases, I will certainly get you a copy if you want to read them. I summarize them here, but some of these are fascinating cases. So is there anything you want to discuss other than, or anything else under the blue sheets? Any questions? Any questions for any of these other items? No? Okay. Well, no, I think Park and Rec was 35 minutes, so I didn't beat the record, sorry about that. But I didn't go an hour.
And then we'll move on to item number 22-770, discussion of duties of Health and Human Services Commission as defined by City Code Volume 1, Section 2-11-5.
Okay, so as you have new members sitting on the commission, we'll have to go over this with Commissioner Mueller later. The creation, the duties and responsibilities of the Health and Human Services are defined in the city code, if you're looking for any information on that. When the commission first formed, it was under a different name, but the basic purpose was they didn't have health care out here. They had a lot of seniors out here with no transportation and no services. So a main priority of this commission was to keep focus on our seniors and the services that we do provide to them. I pulled up the census information that we received, and it was interesting to see that our senior community is at 35%. So we still have a significant percentage of seniors in the area. If you had any questions about the commission or its purpose, you can contact my office. Evie and I can help you with that. I just wanted to touch on that briefly. The other thing I wanted to touch on is we talked about the funding and how it used to be $100,000. This commission has $80,000 usually annually to give to the nonprofits. I did want to let this commission know, and council will hear this in February, is that there is roughly $40,000 in the city's budget that goes to Park and Rec for senior services. However, those senior services right now is, that money is basically allocated for senior transportation. The other money that used to go for senior meals is now provided all by Pinal Gila Council for senior citizens. And that used to be $28,000. At this point, I'm not sure if it's still $28,000 or if it is different, but we do not, we don't even request money from them to provide those meals. They just provide that directly to the city. And that's all handled through Park and Rec as well. This year, they are at about $45,000 on transportation, and they said at this current rate that they're going, they'll probably hit $50,000 for transportation services. So I can see them requesting more funding for senior services, for transportation.
So Jennifer, when you say transportation for senior citizens, are there limitations to the transportation? In other words, if someone is in need of being transported down to Barrows Neurological, that's quite a distance, is that included?
So I didn't ask for the mileage, if there's a cap on mileage. This transportation covers picking seniors up for having them come for meals. It takes them home. It's an ADA van compliant van. They do take seniors to medical appointments or dialysis, x-rays, things like that. That's basically what the transportation funding is for those that don't have a vehicle, need to get medical care. I just didn't ask if there is a cap to mileage
Okay.
or how that mileage is billed.
And is that open just to seniors on their roster, or is that open to the public?
So because this funding for transportation is a city service, it has to be city residents.
And that does not include the county islands, is that correct?
Does not. So I would imagine that those county island residents would contact the Gila, Pinal, we'll get it all together in one, the Pinal Gila County Council for Senior Services and request that. And how that plays out as far as payment to them or how that's billed, I don't know.
Okay, because a lot of the mobile home parks are islands, county islands.
We have about 121 mobile home parks, and there are still a significant number within the jurisdiction of the city.
Okay.
Yeah.
If I understand you correctly, you're saying that the transportation budget goes up, but the meals were not necessarily billed. Does that mean that the number changes from what we'll be able to allocate for the nonprofits?
So the meals is handled directly through Pinal Gila, and I'm not even sure Park and Rec knows how much that money is. They could probably give me, it used to be 28, I don't know if it's still 28. Your 80,000 for local nonprofits is yours to divvy up how you see fit. Your goal is to make sure that all 5 of them are not providing the exact same services, that they're communicating together to try and allocate resources the best that they can. If somebody specializes that they've got a mobile shower unit and somebody else doesn't, they need to be communicating. And that, I know that this has been a big goal of this commission, is to make sure that those nonprofits are communicating. That does come out on their quarterly report. If they are communicating with whom and for what type of services, they'll usually list that. So we kind of monitor it as the administrative end of it. Does that answer your question? Or I can also find out from Park and Rec if they can have an estimate as to how much is provided for meals for seniors.
To be more specific, I was thinking in my head the 80,000, the transportation and the meals, and I was wondering if they all were tied together as part of the same pie. So I was thinking, does the increase in the transportation cost mean that less is coming out of other areas? That's what I was asking is all. But it doesn't sound like that's the case.
Right, they're 2 separate entities with a budget.
Okay.
So your 40 to 50,000 on transportation is strictly through Park and Rec. It's in our city's budget to fund that transportation. The meals are being provided by Pinal Gila and total different budget.
Okay.
So Jennifer, when you say that there's an effort to see coordination, and I absolutely understand, because we asked about that too during
Yeah.
our time, but Do we ever see outcome? In other words, as much as someone asked for coordination, do we ever see what the result of that coordination was? Did
It's-
it work?
It is on their quarterly report. So we compare their contract with the services that they say that they are going to provide.
Okay.
And then in their quarterly report, we review what they said that they have provided, and it will also list who they contacted for services. We usually end up calling each of these nonprofits and going through that quarterly report. We're usually asking for more documentation. How did they verify this? Did they coordinate with anybody else? We'll say, would you please update your report to reflect that and send us a complete report?
So one of the other parts was, whenever they have impediments, hurdles, is that documented, and then how they remedy that? It seems to me that that's a quintessential question, to refund them, and they're not remedying that problem, even though they're saying they're trying to resolve that issue. That's not really a good plan.
I didn't catch the first part of your, when they are,
So obviously, they set forth an agenda that says that these are their goals. But I don't remember being told whether or not there were impediments to those goals and how they remedied those.
they do. They, when COVID hit, it was a prime example of, they were gonna have group settings, they were gonna train the trainer, they had ordered all these books, but they couldn't hold in session. So they did talk about what they tried to do to remedy it and what they did do. It didn't, as a first-time solution, it was not, at 100%, but they did get some people to participate in small groups. So they do talk about what they tried to do, what their goal was, what obstacles they did face, and how they tried to fix it. If the entity is unable to do those services, say for a month, they haven't ordered supplies, they haven't ordered books, they don't get the funding.
Okay.
And that is determined in this office. If you don't meet the goals, and you haven't spent any money to meet those goals, then the funding is not allocated.
Fair enough.
And will we get a report after you get the quarterly reports, either the following month on what if they met their goals for that quarter?
That has not been a standard practice because we usually handle it administratively on our end. And your goal as the commission is to make sure that those entities are trying to do their job and provide services. So you set the standard as saying, this is what you say you're going to do. We'll allocate you this amount of money, and then the oversight of all of that is here. But if you wish for us to provide a report for each nonprofit, what they said that they were going to do and how they met that goal, we're happy to bring that to this commission.
I think we should have that so that we know when our next round comes, around, that we have an idea of what's being met and what's not.
I agree.
Did you get that? Okay. And I think that's all I have for that item.
I don't know if it's appropriate, but can we offer up opinions that we've observed to answer that question about how the agencies have coordinated?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I will tell you, I've attended, they have a homeless coalition in Apache Junction. Usually it's meeting at the MGC, and it meets on the first Thursday of every month, usually at 9:30 a.m. So I've attended those meetings, and I've actually seen a lot of coordination. Like, there are representatives from several of the agencies that have approached us for funding, and I'm seeing a lot of actual, thought go into how do we make sure we're not duplication of efforts, but that's specifically pertaining to how they serve the homeless.
Right.
But I have seen that happen, and I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing.
Okay.
Yeah, so, but I haven't visited every one of our applicants
Right.
or anything like that, but I'm hoping that other commission members have done that, or at least have some opinions too, but.
Just so we don't go as a quorum.
Yeah, it's
Right.
not as a quorum, right? But that is also, the homeless coalition is also open to the public too, if anybody is interested in those meetings. So there is item 22-771, discussion and consideration of amending meeting schedule from the once a month to as-need basis, reserving fourth Monday of each month as a tentative meeting date.
So what happens is, when we set an annual schedule for all of our boards and commissions, so like council, we say, you know, they meet, the regular meetings are the first and third Tuesday of every month. Work sessions are held the Monday before. Every time we cancel one of those, we post a notice and we do an affidavit of posting. So it creates more work for our staff and a lot more paperwork. So we're trying to streamline that and be more efficient. I know the library board was not having a lot of meetings, and so they went to an as-needed basis, which this board used to do. The only problem that I found was trying to schedule a meeting, everyone was on a different kind of schedule. So staff would like to suggest that we still keep the fourth Monday of every month as a tentative meeting date, but rather than officially posting it on my board and us not meeting for a couple of months out of the year, because we really don't, is to just kind of reserve that date and time at 5. And that way, when we do need a meeting, you guys usually have a clear schedule. And that's what we'd like to do.
Anyone want to discuss that? I think it sounds great.
The Public Arts Commission does that. If there's nothing to discuss, we don't have a meeting. It's canceled. But we do have a set date, a set day of the month. It works fine.
Which when we do post that there is a specific date and time, then when you cancel, we post a notice on the board. We do an affidavit of posting. And so we have to keep that paperwork for at least a year. So it builds up, especially when we're just canceling meetings a lot. So what
But-
this, go ahead.
I'm sorry, so can there be, because I absolutely understand the idea of preserving a tentative date, but can there also be a specific date in that week so that things don't get canceled unless some strange emergency comes up last minute, but it's more or less decided the Tuesday before the subsequent Monday?
And that's what you're doing by tentatively reserving it for yourself. If you set a specific fourth Monday of every month at 5, that goes on my required posting, and anytime we cancel, I'm back to having staff create a notice, post the board, do an affidavit, we sign off on it, and we file it away. So the goal is to decrease that loss of staff time and creation of all that paperwork, and just ask the commission to keep the fourth Monday in your mind at 5 p.m., not to schedule anything. But it would not be an official date and time.
No, that's perfect. I think that's quite reasonable.
And then we would just need a motion on that to not have a specific date and time set, but reserve the fourth Monday just in case.
Just
Um,
one last question for you on that one. So then, at what point is it made official? So like, if we say the next tentative meeting is January 23rd, do we just assume that's going to happen, or we know a week in advance if it wouldn't?
So in a week in advance, so usually we'll reach out to the chairman and say, you know, we don't have any agenda items, is there anything you want to address with the commission? And then at that point, he'll let us know, and then staff will either do an agenda or we'll send a notice out, just email you saying, we have no items for discussion at this time.
Okay.
But on that note, one last thing since we're talking about that, which is the item 5. So we can so 4, so I am going to address kind of like our meeting schedule, because we do have the application will open up 1st of December and be due at the end of January. So we can talk about that in 5. Because the tentative schedule is January through July is when you guys really truly meet. Once after that is done, then the rest of the 6 months is the nonprofits are just starting to get into their quarterly stuff. They're starting to spend money. They're starting to initiate programs, because they're all aware not to start a program if they don't have a contract with the city yet. It's kind of like don't count your eggs before the chicken lays them. So, but after July, actually after May, you guys are pretty well done until we get to the first month, November, when you've got new commission members. And then we basically say, we're going to open up the application process, and you'll hear from us in January.
And so one quick question about I don't know if I've been sent a message saying, is there anything you want to meet about? And in that case, if there was that request made, and there was something that I thought was important to share, we would coordinate with you then, because obviously we can't coordinate amongst ourselves to say we want to show up. So if there is anything, would we share that with everybody and kind of get an opinion of should we meet or not meet? Or is it usually the city that decides if you're going to meet?
It's you and me.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. If the commission members have something that they want to bring
Right.
to, they would email you and say, hey, I would like to have a, meeting, I'd like this on the agenda. If it is the only item, you may correspond back and say, this is the only item we have, can this hold off till another date?
Right.
You can have that communication, but other than that, you and I would coordinate the agendas.
Do we have a current list of everybody's emails?
We do, our office does.
So we would call you then and get,
If you need an
Yes.
email, and actually the website will be updated because all the commissioners are listed with an is there an email? I thought there was an email to reach out to you, because the public does reach out sometimes, and then you say, hey, I got an email and somebody's concerned about this.
okay.
Okay, so then are we now on information reports 22-773?
Number 4, if I could have a motion just to remove, I think,
Okay.
do I have a motion? Remove the fourth Monday of every month as an official meeting date and just go to meet as needed.
Okay, so we have can we have a motion for the reservation of the fourth Monday of every month as a tentative meeting date?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Okay. Roll call?
Commissioner Brennan?
Yes.
Commissioner Bory?
Yes.
Commissioner Danford?
Yes.
Commissioner Kinner?
Yes.
Chair Mitchell?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, and then moving on to item H, information reports, 22-773, presentation discussion of January through June Health and Human Services Commission application process and timeline.
Okay. So as I mentioned, the November meeting is usually when Joel will cover all of his code of ethics, open meeting law, parliamentary procedure, those things, as we have new commission members. And then in the end of the month, first part of December, I reach out to our PIO, who does a lot of social media postings, and announces that applications for our nonprofits is open to receive funding. We usually have a list also of the nonprofits in the city that meet the 501c3 standard, and then we will email them and let them know, because they've had a significant number of staff change as well. And so somebody that was in the position a year ago is now gone. There's been a new president of an organization, so they're unaware that there is now funding through the city. So it's just our way of helping them in case they're going through several staff changes. They've got a new director, a new VP, a new person that does their grants. We're finding that they have a high turnover right now. So we'll email them and let them know that the deadline is January 31st. And if it's on our website. The full application is there. It is several pages and very detailed. And then we get those in January 31st. February, my deputy and I review the applications, and we hope to get them to you by the 15th or the 20th of February, so that in March, we're scheduling interviews with the applicants, and you've had a chance to look at the applications, make all the notes that you want. And then we'll have an interview with them in March. Then in April, this gives you a month to determine how you want to divvy up the funding. It also gives you the opportunity for us to say, hey, the commission has a lot of questions about your programs. We'd like you to come back in April for a second interview. We can do that as well in April. In May, the commission then presents their allocations to council, and in June, council then finalizes the budget, which then finalizes the allocation. And then that's pretty much it. July 1 is when all the new contracts go into play.
Any other questions or comments about the timeline? I did want to ask you, is this where we would talk about any public events as well in this part of the agenda?
I've noticed. Yes, information and reports.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not on there, but would any of the council members want to discuss any upcoming public events that happen?
Well, I think we've got the light parade coming up this weekend, and It should be a lot of fun, lighting, lighting of the tree out at the focal point. Hopefully, everybody will be there, and if you haven't done a survey yet for Park and Rec, they're trying to finalize that I think in December, at the end of December. And the forms are out all over the place. Also at the chamber, you can pick up a form to fill out what you would like to see happening, in Park and Rec. And probably more pickleball courts is a lot of discussion about pickleball courts.
Is the event, you said this weekend, is it on Saturday or Sunday?
Yes, Saturday.
Saturday, what time?
Let's see, oh gosh, I don't have it in front of me. I know all day long there are going to be all kinds of events, and there's some posters around town. Probably could get on the website and check out the Park and Rec website for specific times, because there are a bunch of events scheduled all day long, and then in the evening, I think it's 7 o'clock, I believe, for the tree lighting, and the parade follows that. I believe it's 7.
So what I have is,
What do you
it
have?
starts at 3 p.m. to 6:30.
Oh, okay.
At Flatiron Park, where there will be lots of activities. And then Santa vendor booths, arts and crafts, that will be there. And then the light parade starts at 7 p.m.
Okay.
And the parking will be in the dirt lot east of the park.
Okay.
And please don't park at the businesses.
And thank you for that information. Any other upcoming events?
Anything out at the museum, or anybody know of any events out at the museum?
What, the Superstition Museum? He's got his website, he's got most of his events listed on his website now. I don't have any more, I'm not with him anymore, but he had a holiday boutique last weekend. This past week, he's got another one coming up in December. He's got a cowboy event coming up in January.
Wow.
Native American Festival coming up in February. He's got a bunch of stuff going on. But you can find it on the website.
So I wanted to announce the Kiwanis Club. We have a Apache Junction Kiwanis Club, small but mighty club. Still looking for new members. They are having a Christmas party event on Tuesday at 6 p.m. Was supposed to be at the library, but now it's going to be at Maggie Stewart's office. She's our secretary of the Kiwanis Club. So they were collecting unwrapped toys for things for Toys for Tots, and then also like a Secret Santa. So that's kind of a fun thing. So if you need any information, feel free to contact me about that one as well. Rotary Club is always looking for new members as well. They have the Wednesday meetings every week at the golf club. Why am I blanking on the name of the golf club with Dinosaur Mountain? I think it's just the one in Gold Canyon Golf Resort. So they have the golf tournament, and on Saturday, December 17th, for any golfers that are out there. Is a little bit pricey, but the $160 is discounted from what it normally costs to golf there, and that's our big fundraiser for Rotary. So at the end of the year, we gave away over $10,000 of scholarships to local students. So big portion of the funds from the golf tournament go towards that particular thing. And then I did hear from Trinity that Genesis Project has what they call their holiday extravaganza. That is on Saturday, December 17th, at their normal serving time of 12 to 2. So they're going to have people that are caroling, giving away gifts to people in addition to serving food. I think there's appearances by Santa and other things like that. So I guess that's a really fun event. If you know anybody who'd like to be a part of that holiday event, tell them to come there. So and that's really all I have for events. So hearing and seeing none other. Oh, yeah.
Also, we could use more chamber volunteers. If anybody's interested out there in the public that would like to volunteer 4 hours, usually it's a 4-hour shift, but you get to learn a lot about the community and what's going on in the community, and it's a really fun place to be, especially, when all our visitors are back too, so.
Judy, do they do volunteers on the weekend?
No, I think it's mostly Monday through Friday, and the shifts are from 9 to 12:30, and then 12:30 to 4. There are 2 shifts. But you learn a lot about the community and what's going on, and also, you're helpful to the chamber members also, our local businesses, so.
Thank you.
Yep. So hearing no other announcements, we'll move on to item I on the agenda, which is the staff liaisons report.
That's kind of where you, I think I've covered a lot. Other than that, we are going to be reviewing the first quarterly reports from our nonprofits. And so in January, we could probably bring those to you and just provide a brief summary. The reports can be kind of lengthy, but and this way we can just provide a summary with what the services that they did provide and whether they received their funding.
Okay, and if they're struggling, if they have an issue that they're struggling with.
They usually list that,
Yeah.
and how they're going to either try to remedy or they may not provide that service. So,
Yep. And then I guess item J is just the selection of meeting date, time, and location. So the next meeting would be tentatively scheduled for January 23rd, 2023, 5 p.m. here at the City Council chambers.
yep. And since the applications will still be receiving here at City Hall, I'm not sure if we'll have any items at that time, but we will be in touch with you. And if the commission has any items that they would like brought on that January, please get in touch with Chairman Mitchell.
Okay, good.
With that, then we will adjourn at 6:09 p.m.
Thank you. Very good.